So former President Uhuru Kenyatta has said, I have actually no problem at all with the current President William Ruto. I'm not going to call him, but if he calls me, I'm going and willing to talk to him. What's happening between these two leaders, the former president and the current president? That's a conversation that we want to have this evening, as well as looking at what's happening. I'm available to meet one-on-one with you anytime at your convenience. This is after former Prime Minister Raila Odinga and the Azimio leader had earlier said that the president had invited Tanzania's President Samia Suluhu Hassan into the country, and then he snubbed her after inviting her to have conversations and negotiate between the two leaders. What's happening? I want to have that conversation now with three guests in the studio. Senator Essie Okinyuri is our guest, alongside Kevin Osido, who is the Executive Director of County Governance Watch, and governance expert Gabriel Muduma. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening.
Thank you.
Asanteni sana for joining us this evening. Let's just fire it off right here. Let's start with what we saw over the weekend happening with the president and the former president. So a lot's happened, Kevin. I mean, the former president even having a conversation with the editors yesterday and saying, I don't understand what's happening. I have done nothing wrong. What's going on? I'm willing to have a conversation with the president.
Yeah.
What exactly is going on?
Thank you so much, Eric, and good evening to our viewers. I think that what is going on is pure political bad manners between two very highly placed, extremely respected individuals who, in fact, in my view, should be sharing very good practices and extolling good examples to young people like myself and others, particularly those who are in schools. Because if you realize today, we no longer have prefects. Kids, pupils, students up to the level of ECD vote for president, women rep, MCA, senators, etc. because they are learning from our leaders. But to the extent that we have this unnecessary bickering, particularly from presidents, whether present or former, you are a president, especially having served for 2 terms in this very difficult political terrain of a country like Kenya, you need utmost respect. And especially when you have retired, you need to retire. Except and until when, and I think the former president, Uhuru Kenyatta, was very categorical that he said, I am ready to do what the president, because he is my president, so I will do what he wants me to do. And on the same note and tone, I think it would be of an ill manner for a sitting president. Eric, I have tried to follow this issue up to and including speaking to people who are very close to President William Samoei Ruto. And I have asked them, do you think the president is playing us as Kenyans? Because he has told us many times that one is God-fearing, and so he respects God, and with the hope that therefore he is able to treat his co-principals and friends as brothers and then basically be at peace with each other. Would it be possible that he is hunting and haunting the former president? And they're telling me, we don't think he's doing that. In fact, this thing's surprising. But one thing that surprises me is, why is he not talking so loudly about this hunting terrains against the former president?
Why is who not talking loudly?
Why is the president, William Ruto, because it's his handlers, a few people that I have tried talking to try and find out what is going on. Is the president really aware? Is he the one doing this? And they're saying some of these things really surprise him. So I am saying, if they surprise him, why can't he, in the same vein and tone that he is addressing Kenyans on political rallies on top of his very high four-wheel drive wheeled vehicle, also tell us, sijui hayo maneno ambayo yanamzingira aliyekuwa rais wetu na wale ambao wanamfuata wawachane na maneno hayo, especially when you want to go after people's children. And it reminds me of a time when the president, while a deputy president then, also asked the then president to leave his family alone. What is this thing with families? And why must we see people who are of very high repute in society, people who are extremely respected, following each other? So I think for me is just pure bad manners. Waswahili wasema fali wawili wakipigana, Eric, ni nyasi ndio huumia. All this bickering is really affecting us as nyasi, as Kenyans. And of course the international community, the global community, because the profile of this country called Kenya is so high up there. People are looking at Kenya with the hope that we can beam life into their very difficult situations as neighbors and as friends. Why do we want to bring ourselves so low, especially at the level of a presidency? Two presidents, a former one and a current one. I think it is unnecessary.
Senator, he calls it bad manners, and he says, man, it's just bringing us and stooping us so low. Is the issue between the two leaders actually impacting the nation?
First, Eric, I think what is actually happening in what you're terming as a discord is because the two leaders are looking at issues from different points. This is also a moment whereby we look at what former heads of state do. In Africa, for a very long time, people looked at it like for any ordinary head of state in Africa, the only way they would be removed from office was by way of their own natural death. But consequently, we actually saw peaceful handing over of power, of which in Kenya that has happened. But at this point, I think someone like former President Uhuru needs to realize handing over of power at Kasarani was not just about giving that sword and that is it. It actually takes time. And he now needs to realize that President Ruto is no longer his deputy. He's now the commander-in-chief, is the chairman of the National Security Council in this country. And when he gives allegations of the former president funding Azimio demonstrations, those allegations should not be taken lightly. I even saw the former head of state, Uhuru Kenyatta, come and defend his son. His son is a young person like myself who I would have thought would have spoken for himself, and if it goes far, hire a lawyer to speak for himself, on his behalf. If the president is protecting his family, President Ruto, if the former president Kenyatta is protecting his family, President Ruto has a right to also protect the families of Kenyans. Who will protect such people if we entertain such a kind of behavior, where we have largely seen Azimio leaders failing to recognize that we now have a president in office? If they actually recognized the office of the president, we wouldn't be having what we are seeing now.
But I think you're mixing issues here without showing us how they come to mix.
Look at this.
The former president went to Kasarani, handed over power. And the former president, as he said the other day, hasn't since then been in the public limelight at all.
But recently,
openly commenting about what's happening in the country, or even participating in any open public meeting, demonstration and such.
And I have mentioned this, Eric, the former president, and we have always said no one is actually above the law, be it a former president, current president, any ordinary person. Me, as a senator, I'm not above the law. When a former president comes to address a press conference, in his press conference, he even wants to lecture the current president on how he should behave. That's why I actually said this is a moment to reflect back on what former heads of state should be doing. I think in 2005, we had former heads of state commit in the African Union, commit to uphold certain ideals, which was as a result of them actually handing over power peacefully. And I said we've had several of those instances, and the same happened to Kenya. But in Kenya, it's quite different. When former President Kenyatta handed over power to Ruto, he actually didn't quit the scene. And President Ruto has made allegations, him as a chair of the National Security Council, of the former president funding Azimio maandamano. That's not a statement that should be taken lightly. If former President Uhuru Kenyatta wants to be treated with the respect other former heads of state are given, I think let him carry on with the peace envoy role. And as a peace envoy, I expect him to call out the violent and destructive maandamano this country has been witnessing in the last 3 weeks. Eric, I was sitting in the bipartisan talks. We have always been bending to accommodate Azimio, but they keep shifting goalposts, issuing new ultimatums. And the president, Ruto, he's willing to talk to anyone. I don't think Right Honorable Raila Odinga can't call President Ruto and talk to him, that it has to take a Tanzanian to come and make the two of them talk. For me, Eric, especially, we would rather even argue in the boardroom in the bipartisan talk, whereby I get a heart attack, than seeing young people like me die in the street because of Maandamano.
We'll go into the negotiations a bit later in the conversation. I just want to bring in Gabriel at this point. He says bad manners. He says a former president should know what to do when you're exiting office. What's your view?
First of all, thank you, Eric, for inviting us here once more. I think, from my own view, two things preceded where we are today. And I think the current president, William Ruto, was magnanimous enough after the elections, when they happened, actually at Kasarani. The first order of business after swearing in was to give his predecessor what I would call a carte blanche. And that was the peace envoy, like Senator has said. What did that signify? To any self-respecting leader, that would mean this person has a place for me. And you have been given the carte blanche that I'm talking about. You can go to these other countries as a peace envoy, but there's something we are not discussing. Who do you report to at the end of the day, if not the person who gave you the job? So I would expect there to be an open line of discussion. The president, the former president, should actually be calling his, or the current president, and be telling him, you know, this is where we have reached. We should be seeing, you see, you are coming from a backdrop where...
So what you're saying is that the former President Uhuru should be calling President Ruto.
Yes, you have...
To give status reports.
Yeah, not only that,
on the peace process in the DRC.
That is what I would have expected.
But what else?
Apart from that, that in itself opens up an environment where they would be talking. So it actually took me back when the president this week actually shocked most of us by saying, I don't have any need to talk to him. That actually got me by surprise. This is somebody who gave you the job. Now, we know very well their relationship has not been rosy for the past 5, maybe 4 years. And as such, this is somebody who really bent over backwards, if we have to be honest, Eric, who bent over backwards to actually campaign for you in 2013 and 2017. The best you can do, again, if we have to be honest, is you can disagree with him on many fronts, but be honest with them. You can actually have it not to support them. At the end of the day, yes, you have your own reasons, you have your own free will. You can say, I won't support you, but do not decampaign them. I thought that was quite disrespectful. All right? And
so your choices are limited?
No, they are not limited.
Your own freedoms are limited?
No.
Because we were partners 2 years ago.
Eric, these people were not just partners. Let's be honest. I think, you know, you have to go way back if you are to look at their relationship. You can go all the way back to 2022. When they lost to Honorable Moi Kibaki the late.
2002.
2002. They were together. And they have been together even before, when Moi actually surprised the entire country by saying, you know what, this is the person I'll choose. They were together. When they lost, they were together. Somewhere around 2007, things happened. This one was in this mrengo, this one was this mrengo. But eventually, they again came back together. So we are talking about a relationship that has actually been strengthened.
I'm not getting what you're saying here, Gabriel.
No, Eric, you're getting what I'm saying.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are. Because what I'm trying to say is, you are looking at what has transpired by what we have seen, and now that the two presidents, one former president and the current president, are at crossroads.
Yeah.
That's what we are looking at.
Yes.
And me, I'm bringing you from the historical perspective to show you that, yes, one has given the other one a carte blanche and went ahead and gave him something to do. You know, actually,
So basically what you're saying is the president should, former president Uhuru Kenyatta,
we should not be here.
former
Whether
president Uhuru Kenyatta
yes,
should do,
where
should,
you're, where you're
what should he
calling, where
be
you're
doing?
calling a press conference and really chastising the current president of several things, to an extent of saying that he himself is actually moving in a direction as to suggest he may be looking to hurt your family. Now, if you are to accept that philosophy, then you have to tell me that the president lied. President William Ruto lied to us that he does not control the police when he gave them the financial freedom. We know very well he was on TV by saying, I have, and he dared the DCI and NPS, the police, I dare anyone to come and say that I have called and given them instructions. Right? If we are to believe that these institutions are independent, then we have to say, and we have to agree, that if any law enforcement officer would call upon you to say we need or we require this, there is no need really, like Senator is saying, there is no need really to make a hullabaloo. I know so many people who've been visited by law enforcement officers to tell them we need to see, we need to come in, we need to look at, we need you at the police station or at the DCI. And they show up. What I don't want to do, or what I don't, or what I won't want to see is us creating some levels of these people must abide with these certain laws and rules, these others must abide to this. We do not have two sets of laws, Latif. And it should be looked at that way.
So if you were to look at the two leaders, right? Is any of them behaving in a manner that is not desirable to you?
No, let me put it this way. If there was a problem, I would have believed, or I would like to believe, that the former president, Uhuru Kenyatta, has William Ruto's number on speed dial.
And vice versa?
Yes, and they can talk.
Okay.
Because the issue was at the former president's son's, or what we are told, the home of the president's son. What really President Uhuru Kenyatta, instead of all this hullabaloo, what he would have done, in fact, would not have known about this. He would have reached out to his former deputy, the current president now, and said, by the way, there's something going on. Could you find out, because probably
what you're saying
I do not have information, or could you lead me or direct me to somebody who can give me the information that I require?
So, former president hears that his mother's security has been withdrawn.
Yes.
He's quiet.
Yes. And I have the explanation, by the way.
He's quiet.
Yeah.
Right? Former president hears that there are officers in some unidentified vehicle who are at the gate of his son's home. He goes to the home, doesn't call press conference to say, by the way, I hear. He goes to the home. What's wrong has he committed?
Now, you see, that's
so you're saying instead of going to the home,
you see
instead of going to the home, you should have called Ruto.
You see what you've done, Eric? You have actually pushed a narrative that's a little bit flawed. Because what I had, because I followed that up. What I had was, because of the maandamano, some of these officers were taken to serve somewhere else, and they were returned. Did you hear something like that? That's what it was. So I am telling you, what somebody is pushing or want us to believe is that there's a barrier that these two people cannot talk. And that is going to be faulty, because
so why can't
we know
they
the current
talk?
president went through actually a lot of, I mean, me and you know, he actually went through a lot of so
tribulations,
much craziness, and I don't know what you could call them.
In whose hands?
In the hands of the former president.
Okay.
All right. And that's what I'm saying. It would have been all right to say. It would have been all right to say, I don't support you because I have these reasons. But to go ahead and disenfranchise him, that was wrong. That was wrong.
Gentlemen and lady, looking at what we are discussing this evening, we are talking about two of Kenya's statesmen, all right, the only living former president of the Republic of Kenya, and the only living current president of the Republic of Kenya.
Right.
Two of them at that topmost level of our republic.
Right.
And you see as part of this nature. Current president addresses crowds, and he talks about, he refers to the current leaders of Azimio, says your sons are doing this and the other. If your family is not doing this, then if your family is not joining the Mandamano, then you're playing the people.
Right.
While at the same time, his lieutenants, even those that sit in the National Security Council as him, say that the former president is involved in some mischievous activities in the country. That is the president.
Right.
The former president, on the other hand, remains quiet, but what we are hearing from the National Security Council is that he's involved. He comes out, excuse me, the day before yesterday, and he says what he said. These are two leaders, like you've said, who can talk to one another. This is somebody who just 6 months ago was chair of the National Security Council. This is somebody who is presently chair of the National Security Council. Of course, they know the kind of intelligence that's being shared.
Correct.
And they know all these matters.
Right.
Is this good for our democracy?
And that's what I'm telling you, Eric. For you to accept the times we are in right now, you must also look back to how we got here. And that's why I'm saying it's very relevant. It's very relevant that this information that we know, me and you, it actually needs to be dissected a little bit to question.
Eric.
Why are we here? Just 1 minute. It needs to be questioned why we are here. Remember, in February, there are things that happened that I also questioned. Not because it would suggest that the former president does not have his rights, no. But when they came from, and I apologize to bring this story back, when they came in February, when they came from the barrier of the former Cabinet Secretary for Education, Magoha, he was in the same campaign. I mean, if you remember the story of Alikuwa Juu ya Lori, yeah? He said some things which I thought, as a former president, you do not need to say that. Not because you do not have a right to say them, but they just don't look good, Eric. All right? You actually can break the tapes of former presidents. When they were leaving office, the best you could do is say, my friend, I'll be here for you if you ever need any advice or assistance. And you would say, thank you for giving me this amazing job of peace envoy. And, like I said, if you ever need me, I'll show up.
Okay, come in.
Right?
What Gabriel is not telling us, because I think he is being extremely diplomatic and analytically economical with his words. Why do I say this? Why does it have to be the former president making the phone call to the president? And because of the degree of narration that you have given to all of us, including our viewers, around how they relate, I would also expect that the president, having been briefed through NSAC, because, by the way, the kind of people we hear talking about these issues are not even NSAC members. Because we know who sits at the National Security Advisory Council chaired by the president. The people we hear talking about these stories, maybe they hear them from people who sit there. But I would have expected from the narration that you're giving us that the president, having been briefed, would also be magnanimous enough, because you said that,
Yes.
to reach out to the former president and say, Your Excellency, my friend, I have a report here and it doesn't look very good on you. Then you'll be like, what's happening? Oh, your son is suspected, or allegations have it that 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8. So what we want to do is to send our men and women to go and search. Okay? Because the narration that Gabriel is giving us is one-sided. It doesn't have to be. And especially because this is President Uhuru Kenyatta, former, with the extended admiration of what he thinks the president can be able to do, that is President William Ruto, having extended that olive branch to also allow him to be a special envoy. why not also reach out to the former president and say, this report does not look very good on you. And in fact, even the security that your mother has, we want to withdraw them. Because you are saying that you heard that they were withdrawn and redeployed somewhere, then they were taken back. How come that conversation between these two good men did not take place? That the president would be very magnanimous to also take his phone or even send, because the president is a very busy person representing Kevin Osido and everyone else. Yeah, he's very busy with so many important other equally important things. Why not also extend that olive branch? So I think for me, these issues are not new. The former president and the president, who was his deputy, have had not very rosy relations in the past. But I think, and in fact I believe, that at the level of the presidency, there are things that you let go. Or you get some Mr. Fix-Its. All these presidents we are talking about had Mr. Fix-Its that a lot of times we didn't even know what they were fixing until when either they pass on, so they are telling us stories, or they have written very good books which we are reading, and they tell us about what they used to fix at the point of the launches.
Mr. Fix-It.
Exactly.
So what do you want?
So are you advising the current president or the former president?
So what I am asking the president to do is to extend the olive branch magnanimously, not to show us that there are continued conflicts of him having been a deputy and the narration around how he was treated when he was a deputy president. We all know. Maybe there are things that we know because they told us about them. Their family members have shared with our friends who have also shared with us. So at least we have an extension of knowledge of what they went through. But when you are His Excellency the President, Your Excellency, sir, there are things that you don't continuously brush on a rather in
So what you're
political
saying
rallies.
is that he should stop living in the past.
You behave presidential. And beyond that, then you also have people who can, if the president cannot be reached, you send a Mr. Fix-It and say, Your Excellency, sir, the president is looking for you. Please pick your phone, speak to the president. Before we hear these things happening. And I think it's not just at the level of the presidency. If you hear what the senator is talking about, which I think is called the advisory of former presidents in certain jurisdictions like the US, this is purely how they engage. They don't go to radio stations, TV stations and say, oh, we have seen you have signed something, which in fact, if I was president, I would never have signed it. They have a way of very quietly navigating around it. And if they are very far away, they reach out to people in their offices and they say, I am sending so-and-so with a brown envelope, not with money envelope, but with a message, or a white envelope, written urgent, please kindly ensure that the president himself or herself opens that envelope, and then the message is there. It's never dramatic like what we see in our country, Kenya.
But maybe it's because we lack institutions. But come in, Senator.
Eric, and it's very unfortunate that we actually seated here discussing a former head of state. And in as much as you would want to say, like President Ruto being the one in charge now should reach out, but former President Uhuru Kenyatta has not conducted himself in a manner that doesn't have him run in some of these conversations we are having now. Can you imagine, after the search was conducted, several guns were actually acquired, were actually collected from the home. Can you imagine if the other 50 million Kenyans also acquired 3 each? We would be having 150 million guns,
but they were
and
licensed.
this would be a failed state.
They were licensed. These were not illegal firearms. These were firearms that were licensed by the government.
We saw President Moi supported Kibaki, former president, the late. His own candidate, Uhuru, Dean Twin, became leader of opposition. But we didn't see President Moi call press conferences calling out Kibaki. He let him lead, you know. But what we are seeing now, we are seeing a former president who has now decided to engage in local politics instead of assuming the other role that former heads of state assume across the globe, and or even learn from other eminent persons. So if you decide to engage in such local politics, be sure that whatever you are looking for will catch up with you.
Senator,
President.
let's be fair in the chronology of events. Okay, the former president spoke yesterday for the first time to the media. We've been looking for him. We've been asking, can we interview this for? He has not been available. He spoke yesterday. He was available to the media, but this is after the events of the weekend.
And look
So
at this,
chronologically,
Eric.
let's start with what happened to actually smoke out Uhuru Kenyatta.
And this is happening because I've said the former president is engaging in local politics, and allegations have been made of him funding maandamano that has been happening in the
making allegations?
last 3 weeks.
Why would a government make allegations?
When President...
The National Security Council, right, has the constitutional mandate to consume intelligence, has a constitutional mandate to advise the president and other security organs on what to do, the actions to take. The people who sit in the National Security Council include the Inspector General of Police,
Eric,
who has the mandate, constitutional mandate, to enforce law and order.
Eric,
So if you're consuming intelligence that tells you that Essie Okinyuri is funding unrest in the country, you have the power as the IG of police to take action,
let me ask
to
you.
order proper investigations, to take this to the DPP, let the DPP take this to court. Why are we discussing this in political rallies?
Let me ask you, Eric, if those allegations are false, why hasn't the former head of state come out to call out
That's
what
not my
his
issue.
brother
My question
is
is,
doing, even to consult
if
on
this
the
was
signature
Essie Ekinuri
collection?
making allegations, that would be something we can discuss. This is the National Security Council.
And he should
The
come
chair
out
of the
to
National
then
Security
he should
Council,
come out to
members of the National
refute.
Security Council saying it. Why are they telling us? Why can't they take action?
The former, I still insist, the former head of state should come out and refute such allegations. If he doesn't do that, we deem them true. Because he says the Right Honorable Raila Odinga is his party leader. When your party leader is going to an extent of doing what you think is not right as a peace envoy, why don't you call him out? Or else we assume you're one and the same.
Okay. Yesterday in the press conference, the former president actually said, I have not been involved in the maandamano. On Friday, when the police were at when the media was at his home, at his son's home, and he was asked that question, he said, have you seen me? Have you even heard me making comments about what's going on in the country?
Eric,
So he has responded. He has refuted the allegations. Are we going to hear the end of it now?
Eric, it's time Right Honorable Raila Odinga and former President Uhuru Kenyatta realize they are not core principles of the current President Ruto. Yeah.
The question that I'd like to raise
That is
as
a
we move
fact,
on into the
which
next
is
one,
why it is bad manners. Yeah, they have,
on that issue,
yeah.
the kind of institutions that we are building, with just 13 years into a new constitution, with 60 years in independence, and the institutions that we have in place, how does it sit? How does this public spat between two leaders who are still powerful in terms of they still have political clout in the country, how does it sit for our democracy? And I want to start with you, Senator.
Eric, if you would ask me, I started by saying no one is actually above the law. If people followed and obeyed the rule of law, then it wouldn't even be about President Ruto, it wouldn't be about former President Kenyatta, it wouldn't be about me as a senator, it wouldn't be about any other ordinary person. If guys were actually following our constitution, and our current constitution actually caters for most of these issues we are now dealing with. Look, Eric, we had elections, there was an outcome which was contested at the Supreme Court. The matter was canvassed extensively, and the winner was declared. But you have an opponent who refuses to accept the outcome of that result. How do you deal with that individual? I do not expect you to answer me, but those are some of the issues we are dealing with. If such an opponent would be respecting the institutions we have, because really we have a law in this country, and we say when you don't agree with the election result, You can challenge the outcome at the Supreme Court. After that, the winner is sworn in. But you can see what our case is in Kenya. So such issues, I maybe would need to call out every other leader in this country to respect the institutions we have. And I would commend President Ruto. He swore to actually stand with our constitution. And he's done that even when we've had court orders going against some of his proposals. He's not come out to challenge what the courts have ruled. He has actually let the court process take its own route.
Okay.
At this point, the challenge we are having, if I would say, there's like currently, there's mere leaders say they do not recognize Ruto's presidency. So if you don't even recognize him as an individual, then recognize the office of the president. The moment you will do that, then we will not have people want to lecture a sitting president, wanting to give advice. We honestly need to maintain sanity. In as much as it's a tricky balance, we need to maintain sanity and respect. And like I said, it's time, right, Honorable Raila Odinga and the former president agree and acknowledge that really President Ruto was elected by the majority. He's now serving Kenyans. And if I make reference to the tweet he just did a few hours ago, you know, he's going to open up and create more linkages in Tanzania for our citizens in Kenya to benefit. So for him, he has no time for engaging in petty sideshows. He's been very open-minded. In fact, from the very first day he was sworn into office, he started welcoming delegations from Nyanza, Central, even from the worst enemies whom you wouldn't imagine he would engage. That's the kind of person we are talking about here, Eric.
Gabriel.
Eric, I told you, for there to be an agreement, if all of us are going to agree, and here I'm talking about our ideas of our current state.
Yes.
We cannot run away from how the current president was mistreated in the past 5 years.
Yes.
You cannot run away from that.
That's true.
Secondly, there has to be acceptance that the person the former President Uhuru Kenyatta supported did not win. That has to ring and that has to register home. And that's why I'm saying the level of acceptability must supersede this desire of always wanting to be in the face of each and every little thing that is going wrong in this country. You asked a very good question, and you asked Senator here the issue of NSAC. If they had this intelligence that that's what was happening, why didn't they reach out? No. I would have expected, out of the current president being magnanimous with the former during the swearing in, I'd have expected the person who is the peace envoy within our region to have called the Azimio leader, because this is an issue he had a problem with in 2017. And so we need to find another way of reaching out and giving peace a chance, because in any way, of course, there was the bipartisan talk where the senator is a member.
But how do you know Uhuru hasn't reached out to Raila?
I don't think, I can guarantee you.
How do you know?
They can guarantee you, because I told you, there was something he did in Nyanza when they came from the barrier of the former CS for education. That in itself, even though he had his rights, it was an honor. He should not have done that. Similarly, when he calls a press conference, and I know you will say, oh, he had the rights, because you cannot be seen to appear as if you're chastising somebody who you have really disrespected, and you have to use that word, for the past so many years. And that's why I'm saying most of us supported the former president, Uhuru. At one point, we were in the Jubilee Brigade. We supported him, all right? But the level of acceptability when you have lost to the person you highly disenfranchise. I know it is hard for you to accept, but something must go beyond that level of saying, this is my party leader. Yet, when there's an issue that you know very well is a threat to peace, you cannot talk to your party leader, then that suggests, like the senator is saying, many people will believe that you're in it. Let me tell you.
I want you to address the question that is what's going around now. We have a constitution, we've got institutions,
right,
and we are seeing what's happening. How does that mirror our institutions and our constitution?
Can I tell you, Eric, how you can finish this thing once and for all?
Yeah.
And to this probably is to the Azimio leader and to the former president. Just stop antagonizing the current president. It's that simple. Now, I am not saying you don't correct him. The current president has actually tried to burn the midnight oil to bring people together and ask, can we create this office, the office of the leader of opposition? Because yes, he's saying, hold me to account. But there's a level in which when we engage or when they engage, it becomes a threat to peace. So that's why I'm telling you, Eric, it is very simple for us to finish this. It is like when the handshake happened. Why did the handshake happen? From where I'm seated, I can tell you without fear of contradiction that the handshake was more commercial than it was political. Me and you know this.
I don't know.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
There's a lot that
yes, you do.
I wasn't aware.
Yes, you have to be. Eric, you live in this country. You live in this country.
So you want another commercial deal to happen?
This is what, well, the current president has said it's not happening. We can create the office of the leader because he says we are in this mess because of that particular handshake.
So do you want another commercial deal to happen?
No. No. Let us deal with it the way we can have accountability and for people to be responsible. If we have the office of the leader of opposition, the man or the person who will inherit that office, guess what? He has a platform where he can air his grievances. It can be captured that this is what we are dealing with. At some point, Eric, honestly, in this country, we must learn how to do things within the parentheses of the law.
Point of knowledge.
General,
my good friend,
you can continue, General
Gabriel Muduma needs to be informed that the issue that is denying, which is what you are trying to confirm from him, what he is calling the commercial what?
Commercial deal.
Commercial deal.
Yes.
Is what might lead us to what you are calling leader of official opposition. In our current political system, there is no room for that.
No room for what?
Look at it this way. We have a pure presidential system.
Correct.
At the National Assembly, we have elected leaders.
Yes.
On what premise is whoever you want to be leader of official opposition going to be in Bunge or in Senate or wherever? There has to be a mechanism.
That's why I'm saying that conversation
and that
should
is
happen.
what he's calling a commercial deal.
No, that's not a commercial deal.
No. Is because what you're saying is, for example, the handshake happened, and that was also an extension of some olive branches to try and deal with some of these issues. Yeah. And you realize that one of the proposals, a very good proposal that the president has made, is can we have this office set up?
Correct.
What is the mechanism? Because constitutionally, it is not going to happen. And even if it happens, it doesn't have to be Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga unless we are pushing Kenyans to a referendum. And I'm sure that probably you are aware about that. Changing the executive structure of the governance system of Kenya is not just done by people sitting and shaking hands. Unless we go through a process like 2007, 2008, where we had a very global conversation around the state of Kenya.
Actually, the office of the leader of opposition is there, by the way.
But it is an elected member. That's one. Number two, it is not supported. Already there is someone occupying the leader of
minority.
Exactly.
Leader of minority,
that office
yes.
exists.
Yes.
So who do we want to create this office for? Yeah. And what is the mechanism? Because
What's the proposed solution?
My proposed solution is a dialogue between the principals, so that then we go and establish a dialogue framework, something similar or akin to the 2007-2008, where the political games almost became to a standstill. And everyone said Kenya is too big than all of us. And I remember at Safari Park, the prayer day, National Prayer Day, All of them came and said Kenya is too big.
Correct.
Bigger than I am. Kenya is too big. And they were even asked to shake hands, hug each other and embrace each other.
The senator is saying,
we moved forward.
how about you get to a point where everybody is basically mature enough to accept the situation as it is?
And I
you
want to-
lost,
yes.
you go home. You have retired, you go home. The one who is in office stays in office and governs.
And
Right.
I want,
What's the dialogue for?
What the dialogue is for,
Let's finish and then you can come.
with due respect, Senator,
continue.
is on the state of the political economy of Kenya. Something bigger than the people we are calling principals. Because if you look at some of the issues that Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga is assumably or seemingly fronting for, they transcend him. And I think today he spoke, is it today or yesterday? Today he spoke and he said, some of these issues, even as Azimio, we have actually taken a back seat and we are seeing Kenyans pushing for them. Cost of living, whether we want to, and I know that the government has also been very categorical around some of the issues that they are talking about. But how are we going to be talking about cost of living when fuel prices are so high up there? The courts and institutions that we have given the power have pronounced themselves, but we don't see any changes that are supposed to be navigated through by institutions of the same government. Must it be Raila Amolo Odinga to talk about it? I don't think so. Number two, issues around IEBC. We have areas in this country, Eric Latif, that don't have representatives.
Yep.
An MP from
Banisa.
Yeah, Banisa is dead. They don't have a rep. We have MCA, we have wards in Kakamega, is it Kakamega or Vihiga? Kakamega, where they don't have representatives. What is happening to the universal political suffrage of those people who come from those particular wards? And Mheshimiwa Raila and Azimio are saying, we need to talk about the IEBC issue. I might not agree with their formula and the manner in which they are saying it, but it is an issue that is affecting certain levels of Kenyans. So if it is going to be a conversation of gentlemen sitting for a dialogue, so be it. But my ask, Eric, is that we consider these issues bigger than these individuals. So that even when we are talking, and she was and still a member of the bipartisan process, it doesn't have to be parliamentarians only using Article 1.1 of the Constitution or Article 1.2, where we surrender now our representation to them, allow an inclusive process where everyone now seems or looks at Kenya exactly and ventilate, and you create opportunities where they are also able to ventilate. Because I think that as I said earlier on, fali wawili wakipigana, it is nyasi, na nyasi in this particular context and content actually is the Kenyan people.
But now, like she says, Azimio no longer wants dialogue.
I don't know why they do not want dialogue. They will have to consider a dialogue. Because these issues, as we are saying, and they said it,
They've been
are bigger than
dialogue.
them.
Yeah.
And I was sharing with the senator earlier on, before we came here, that because even those members of the bipartisan process, they are not angels. They're neither angels nor they are not are they small gods. We have them in WhatsApps and we can ask them, kwa nini mnakataa mazungumzo? They say they are being mistreated, and the senator is here. I don't know what that means. They say the manner in which the conversations are going on are disrespectful to the leadership of Azimio, or I don't know what the issues are, but I think that it is a good platform, and Kenyans have been able to pronounce themselves, and they have said, expand this process. If Azimio people don't want dialogue, we are going to have a dialogue, and very soon we are asking the president to sit with Wananchi. Of course, he has sat with the media, he's told us his agenda, what he's calling the plan. I like some of those issues. They are very good dreams for Vision 2030, but there are urgent issues that Kenyans are asking the president and the government of the day, please respond to this particular concerns that
Listen to the people.
Exactly.
Senator.
Eric, there is a serious conversation we should be having even currently, entrenching the rule of law. A country which relies on elite and elite entitlements, is built on a shaky ground. That is what we are actually suffering from currently in Kenya. Look, it is not enough to actually clamor for a political settlement. If I make reference to the handshake we had in the past regime, that was a bad leadership experiment, which should never happen in this country. what Kenyans, and including political leaders and ordinary Kenyans, need to commit to is standing with the Constitution, and to be specific, Article 3, which actually is talking about to respect, uphold, and defend this Constitution. The moment you actually stick with that, we will be having every other person sticking to their lane. Honestly, if you respect whatever Article 3 as it actually states, why would you be coming up for a political settlement just because the outcome of the result didn't favor what you actually anticipated? Because those are the real scenarios we are seeing. And when you are talking about talks, the Kenya Kwanza side of the bipartisan talks has been very accommodating and very patient. But Eric, they have chosen the street and war over dialogue.
Mm-hmm. You're saying you're mistreating
we would rather argue with
How have you been
Akina.
treating
We would rather
your counterparts in
Let me
this
tell you, Eric, I would rather argue in the boardroom in the bipartisan talks and have a hypertension or heart attack than seeing a young person like myself die on the street. But what has happened? They have decided to get their solutions from the streets. What do you do? Even as late as
that
today,
you are mistreating them
as late
in
as
the bipartisan talks.
as
What are you
late-
doing? Are you having tea without them?
How
Or
would you mistreat them, Eric? You can
are
play
you giving them
several.
a different set of chairs?
You can play several of our clips. Even late this afternoon, we made a statement, the Kenya Kwanza side, appreciating that the Azimio side has called off the violent demonstrations. And now we are still telling them, please now embrace dialogue. And in our framework of agreement, which we had with them, had space for this the bodies that my brother here is talking about. So these talks were not locking out the religious leaders who are coming to give their views. But because Azimio were not very genuine with what they actually wanted out of these talks, they kept shifting goalposts. Every other time they have new ultimatums. Seriously?
Okay. The latest developments, as we know, is that there have been international leaders who are in the country who have reached out to the top leadership saying, have a conversation. Okay? Samia Suluhu Hassan, Raila has said, was in the country. The president has not said, no, that's not true. So we go with that. She was in the country. Other leaders have been in the country. The diplomatic community has been doing some shuttle diplomacy among these leaders. The president has said, I am willing to have a conversation with Raila Odinga. What do you see happening in the next couple of days?
And you, Eric, if you can actually remember, some time back, Right Honorable Raila Odinga said President Ruto was actually frustrating the talks. Then later he says he's open to the talks. This evening, the president made a tweet of him reminding Right Honorable Raila Odinga that he has actually been very open to anyone talking to him. Raila Odinga is someone who can actually call President Ruto. Do you need a Tanzanian to actually come in between the two of you for you guys to talk to each other? We are talking about a president who has even appointed people who never supported him because he's looking at what is this person bringing to the table.
Okay.
Even on his first day in office, I mentioned it here, he welcomed people who are not even supporting his plan.
So is this tweet by President Ruto a gesture to Raila Odinga saying, I have appointed others before, let's talk?
It's not about, there's a difference between power sharing and talking.
Yeah, there's a difference between power
There's
sharing and
a
appointing.
huge difference about between power sharing
That's why I'm asking the
and
question.
having talks. What we are seeing here,
What is your interpretation of what the president has tweeted this evening?
the president is actually reminding Right Honorable Raila Odinga that I've actually been very open to the talks. He is actually the president who extended the olive branch to them that come, let's talk. Then we had the formation of the bipartisan committee. From our end, we had our members and Azimio brought their members. Later, Right Honorable Raila Odinga says the president is frustrating the talk. What has actually changed now that he's now saying he wants to dialogue? Not unless there is a different kind of dialogue. But for the president, and when I read this tweet, he's saying what he's actually been saying all along. From the very first time, even before this committee, the bipartisan committees were formed, he always said, please, let's come, let us talk, so long as there are issues affecting Kenyans and within the constitution.
Okay. Eric, let me give you another side. And I'm glad that Senator has actually eloquently, brought out some of the things which I think, need to be regurgitated for Kenyans to continue understanding where we have come from and probably where we should be going. She sits in a very, very important committee, like the bipartisan talks, and she's been privy to quite a lot of things. Now, yes, there's going to be dialogue, but to my friend, you have to realize, even before the president will sit down or is going to sit down with Honorable Raila, the president has actually crisscrossed the entire country. I cannot point a certain region where he has not gone. What is he doing? He's talking to Kenyans. That's the dialogue I want to hear. Now, if you're telling me we have an issue or we need to discuss something to do with the high cost of living, that is a debate that we should discuss. If you're talking,
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, if you are saying that we need to talk about education, it is something we need to discuss. If you're talking about health, yes. If you're talking about all those, we agree. All right, and that's why I'm saying this has to be extended. That's why the president, every place he goes, the area leaders are present. The area leaders are present, governors, because when you talk about things like food insecurity, agriculture is a devolved function. They have a lot of say in it. It's no longer the national government calling the shots. All right, so they have a say. It would. Wait a minute. It would be. Wait a minute. It would be good. It would be idyllic for me to hear what the governor of Murang'a, what the governor of Kisii, what the governor of Mombasa, what they have in their plans, both short and long term, in matters food security. I would love to hear.
Is a national function.
Wait a minute. Moving forward.
As we conclude,
wait a minute. Just
the tweet this evening.
Yes, we are getting there. The dialogue that we are talking about, even though I'd like to see it very structured, it can only proceed by you telling me who Honorable Raila Odinga wants to dialogue with. Is he coming into dialogue with somebody he will accept as validly elected? Somebody who has satisfied all the merits of what you call a legally elected leader? Because if he is coming to the table of dialogue, then he has to accept that is the person who was validly elected by Kenyans. That is one thing. My last thing on IEBC.
Number 12.
Honestly, Latif, that should not be the conversation.
Of tonight's
Yes. That's what I'm telling you. That's what I'm telling you. So, that tweet, the president has always been open. And he said it not once, not twice. But you have to tell me, if he dialogues with Honorable Raila, which I would really look forward to seeing, and I can say that again without fear of contradiction, you also have to tell me, when did it become wrong, or after that dialogue, will Honorable Raila be chastised by his people? Because I know so many people from his area who have come to talk and dialogue with the president. I know leaders like Akina Jalano. I know leaders from his backyard, like David Ocheng. These are elected leaders who have come to talk to the president, but immediately they leave. They've actually been recalled by the ODM party. Is that going to happen when Honorable Raila Odinga comes to sit with the
Well, it depends on how he manages it. I mean, as a party leader, he may call a leadership meeting and say, I've been invited to a meeting, what should I take to the table? He's handled such things before.
Eric, I have a big problem with my good friend Gabriel. In fact, I am beginning to reconsider some of my interests, because he's a gentleman I like listening to. But I wish to inform him. That's why I've been saying point of information. The truth that you're exacerbating is a little bit false.
Which one?
Because, for instance, if you look at the commitment of this government on the issues that Kenyans are talking about, and I'll give you an example of health, and I hope that this particular conversation is also taking advantage of the political, economic, political and economic context, and we're looking at government moving forward.
Right.
In the budget that was read, most of the functions, in fact, health is devolved. Only policy rests with the national government.
That's what I've just said. You did
But
not say
I
health
want to correct,
Okay.
because you're saying that there is commitment on a number of issues that Kenyans are talking about.
Right.
When you have a budget that gives national government 159 billion for national government Minister of Health and 130 billion for county governments, what level of commitment is that? That's just an example of health. And if we had time, because I keep working with my notebook, I've done a lot of analysis on all these issues. I would have gone to water, what they have budgeted for, and what counties, because you are asking governors to come and sit and engage, because you're saying they represent the people.
Yes.
But in terms of the commitment levels, there is one thing to come and sit and engage because you respect the president, you want to be seen to be there representing your people, but there has to be something which I would call the action superseding the talk. For Kenya Kwanza government, on a number of the issues that Kenyans are saying, which I asked us to consider beyond Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga, the government has not been very committed, especially on the budgetary allocation. So let me rest the point of information aspect there. And we can have that discussion around the budget, what the counties are getting, what the national is staying with, etc.
Now interpret the tweet.
The tweet,
In conclusion.
I see it at two levels. One, and in the context of the conversation that we have been having, I am sure that the president is following from the cue that has been set by the former prime minister, that he had a press conference. Of course, he was speaking to some society, and he had that opportunity. In my view, the president didn't have to tweet that I am again extending this olive branch to Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga. I'm going to Dar es Salaam when I come back, etc. But maybe my interpretation is he is doing it publicly on his Twitter account because of a response to some of the things that have been said by leaders, including the fact that a president of a neighboring country was in the country. Yeah. Did it have to take Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga to speak about it for the president now to insinuate it in his tweet by almost responding and further extending that olive branch? One. Two, my interpretation of the tweet is that the president is willing to engage, and he has continuously said this: I am willing to have this discussion. Anyone who is interested in having this discussion, let's come and talk. Which is why I finish by saying it is pure bad manners. You don't have to keep reminding us that I want to talk to Eric Latif. Just reach out. You know where to get Eric Latif. Look at this. When they were at Kasarani, there was a lot of the tension that was simmering all over in the country suddenly just fizzled under the table because two gentlemen met and were there watching and playing and shaking hands, and that is what we are asking these two gentlemen to do. You don't have to tweet, you don't have to do press conferences. Hawa watu wanajuana, wanajua pahali pa kupatikana.
You see the statement that he has said.
Thank you.
That's actually what I've been trying to say. You want us to believe that there's this brick wall that Honorable Raila cannot, like when they went to, what was it, Kipkeino Classic?
Yep.
When the two of them, they were there. Are you telling me Honorable Raila would not have come to the president and said, Your Excellency, I would like to have a conversation?
The problem I have with that, Eric, is that
give me time.
Gabriel wants others. Gabriel is asking others to do
the
it.
following weekend, the president
Eric,
said,
and surely then, if this is the conclusion we are coming to, then was the maandamano and blackmail necessary?
Correct.
Yes and no.
Was the
No,
grandstanding,
yes and no.
Was the grandstanding by either side
Necessary. Exactly.
You see, Eric,
All of this,
what
all of
grandstand?
this,
You know, you have
Because
to prove
the
to me.
Kenya
all of
Kwanza
this,
side
as Kenyans.
has been very open to talks.
Correct. Who?
The president opened up to the talks the very first time, and I mentioned it here even before we were constituted as a committee.
Yes.
But Raila Odinga opted out and resolved to maandamano. Then later he says he's open to dialogue. Then was
This
maandamano
maandamano,
necessary?
Eric, is beyond Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga.
No.
In fact, for the last 2 days, we haven't seen what we think is Raila pushing them and Amanos. What I'm asking us
That's
to
why
do
he's
is
calling for.
Yes, ceasefire.
He's not calling for ceasefire because it's getting out of control.
And in fact,
for
he
him.
said that these Mandamanos will go on. Because if you look at the issues, the international media has been very, because we are monitoring what's happening. They are saying Kenyans are demonstrating over high taxes, high cost of living, but locally we are saying Raila Amolo Azimio Maandamanos. We must separate and take away Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo from this issue and consider these issues as issues that are hurting Kenyans. When kids cannot go to school, it has to concern our government.
I agree.
And every other time we will resolve to coming up with a pay bill number.
The international media is reporting, the Kenyan media is reporting what the ground is saying.
Correct.
These Mandamanos are called by Azimio, so they are Azimio Mandamanos.
Correct. Because that's what I want to say, Eric. There is no Mandamano tomorrow. It will not happen.
And Mandamano was never necessary.
Exactly.
They'll be because Azimio has said,
but
Gabriel Muduma, governance expert, thank you very much for joining us. Senator S.C. Kinyuri and Kevin Osido, who is the Executive Director of County Government Watch. Let me conclude with this story. Schools with junior secondary implementation in its first year, the government is already planning ahead to avoid hitches that threatened the rollout of grade 7 this year. The Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development Chief Executive Charles Ongondo says curriculum designs and books for grade 7 have been distributed, with grade 8 distribution of books set for September. Professor Ongondo was speaking in Nairobi during the 4th African Curriculum Association Conference at the KICD.
With junior secondary class set to enter its second year next year, the government says curriculum design and books for grade 7 are already in schools, with grade 8 books set to be distributed before the end of the year. Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development Chief Executive Professor Charles Ongondo says the government is determined to avoid the pitfalls that beset the rollout of grade 6.
As we speak, we have developed curriculum designs for grade 8. They are going to be distributed before the year ends. We have evaluated the books for grade 8. The publishers have already been given letters to print them, and we shall be starting the distribution in September.
And although still 2 years away, curriculum designs for grade 9, which is set for 2025, are also ready for distribution by November.
So that covers junior school. By 2026, when we start senior school, I can assure the country, as we talk today, we have curriculum designs for grade 10. This is the first grade of senior school ready at the institute.
Meanwhile, evaluation of grade 10 books, which is the pioneer grade of senior secondary, is set for April next year.
During the April holidays, we shall be evaluating books for grade 10 so that we can start to socialize teachers of senior school earlier. In the course of next year, which is still 2024, we shall be finalizing in August the curriculum designs for grade 11, and in November we shall be evaluating the books for them. That means, as an institute, we are prepared that by the year 2024, if we spill over by mid-2025, we shall have curriculum designs for senior school ready, we shall have books for senior school ready, and we shall now be embarking on digital and electronic curriculum support materials.
At the same time, curriculum developers from across Africa are calling for the creation of a continental curriculum development framework to harmonize education and curriculum designs in the continent. Speaking during the 4th African Curriculum Association at the KICD in Nairobi, speakers at the conference said a harmonized curriculum will ensure a streamlined and concerted approach to education and curriculum development and reviews in the continent. Shadrach Miti, KT News.
Thank you very much, Shadrach. And with that, we come to the end of Newsline tonight. Thank you very much for watching. Wish you a good evening.